Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this extra, not extraordinary, meeting of the Development Management Committee. Because of the importance of the subject matter and the volume of the papers that we've received over the course of today, I propose to give members 10 minutes to properly read and absorb the late observations. I know most of you have been sat there doing it already, but take 10 from now until 7:10 when we will convene the meeting at proper. Thank you. Councillor Manston, could you please come and sit on the front row with the other members? No, all members will be on the front row, please. May I remind members that there's no communication with anybody else from the moment we start the meeting. Thank you, Laura. Well, members, I've been extraordinarily generous and you've actually had 11 minutes. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask that we keep the noise down upstairs during the course of the meeting, please. And officially, I'm going to open by saying, this evening, there are no fire drills planned. If the fire alarm is activated, which is a continuous siren with a flashing red light, please leave the building immediately following the fire exit signs. Charlie, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. I have received apologies of absence from Councillors Camp and Councillor Shea, Councillor Thornton being substituted by Councillor Haslam, and Councillor Perry Cole will be speaking as a local ward member, so I have received his apologies for absence as a committee member tonight, and he is being substituted by Councillor Glynis Darrington.
Thank you very much. Now, you've had 10 minutes to read the late observations. I can't tell you how important they are because there's a lot of difficult information within them. But moving forward, we'd appreciate it very much if everybody could please switch off all mobile phones unless they are specifically required for a purpose for this meeting or for something personally urgent, which obviously we would understand. This is just a reminder that activities on telephones which may not be visible from within here very often are visible on the video screen. Now, this is a note for members, please. It is incumbent on members of the committee to ensure that they remain impartial and receptive to all points of debate before reaching a decision to vote on the application. Failure to do this may make any decision, whether to approve or to reject the application, susceptible to a legal challenge. If any member feels that they can't, they should consider leaving now. Members of the committee should recognise the effect that their behaviour can have on the public's perception of the council, and please may I ask you to conduct yourselves accordingly. In accordance with the Constitution, there will be the opportunity for members to ask questions of clarification of the speakers. For the speakers, please note the questions will be asked to you directly and it will be for you to answer them, not one of your colleagues. But you may refer to a colleague for information. We would ask that they please don't respond directly and shouldn't use the microphone when giving that advice. Please do not make comments, interject or draw attention in the meeting other than when questions are asked of you directly in that part of the meeting. Speakers are not permitted to comment on tonight's debate at all. I've drawn your attention already to the late observations in the addendum report and to the amendments to the recommendation, condition 10, and the new informative. Any decision made by this committee needs to be robust and must stand up to legal scrutiny in the event of any challenge. It is essential, therefore, to ensure that any decision made by the committee is made on the basis of full and up-to-date information. As set out in the addendum report, this has been drafted to take account of the additional information sought by the committee, as well as any other information arising since the last time this application was considered. Officers are alert to the time that has passed since the original consideration of this application on the 29th of January 26. You will note that membership of the committee has altered in that time. For these reasons, the application is now being presented as a whole and anew to the committee. This approach ensures that the report, the advice and the information provided to all members is current and comprehensive. Members were previously minded to refuse the application, as noted in the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes are attached to the addendum report on page 53 of the full papers. The application was not finally determined, and to confirm, all options remain fully open to the committee. Providing the committee with the report, the presentation and up-to-date information in full is intended to ensure that members have the most up-to-date context and advice to decide the application and to help safeguard the integrity of the process. Sorry I've had to go through all that, but now we've done. I'd like to go to item 2 on your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest or predetermination? Councillor Horwood.
Chairman, just a declaration of interest, just to make clear that I work for UK Power Networks, which is the electricity distribution network operator. I have sought advice from our legal team, as obviously the majority of works are related to the IDNO, the Independent Distribution Network Operator, which is entirely separate from the DNO. The DNO obviously has a very small part in this, and my role does not involve in any way the connection or anything of this. So just to clarify that, and that I keep an open mind.
Thank you. And I was present when you acquired that advice, so understood. Anybody else? Okay. Has anybody not been lobbied? Glynis, you haven't been lobbied. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Glynis Darrington, my apologies. I didn't give you your title. And Councillor Morgan, you haven't been lobbied either. Okay. Right. Everybody else has. Got that? Right, in which case let's move to item 4.1. Various sites including the land south of Idley Court Road and east of Hartley Bottom Road, New Ash Green, Kent. Addendum. May I please ask the officer if she's ready to present the report to us? Nicola. I have just noticed that I haven't asked the committee if they approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Because this is not an extraordinary meeting, it's an extra meeting, we do have a minutes to approve. Are there any reasons not to? In which case, all in favour, please show. Any against? That's carried, thank you. Sorry, Nicola.
Slideshow again. Earlier. Apologies. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So, as presented, we're considering the application for a solar farm at New Ash Green. So that's a solar array with associated infrastructure, cable route and grid connection, and new access tracks alongside local land regrading works. This slide shows the location of the site. The main site referred to in your papers is on the eastern side of New Ash Green, bound broadly, but which is it's 95 hectares of land. Its western boundary is bound broadly by Hartley Bottom Road. Its north and eastern boundary by Idley Court Road and New Street Road, which then cuts in on the eastern side to Rectory Road. The site then cuts round the back of Ridley and moves further south to Pease Hill and Ridley Hill. On the western side of New Ash Green is the point of connection site, and that's referred to as the switching station on that plan. And that is where the solar farm would connect to the UK Power Network pylon. Between the two sites is a cable route running largely along Red Hill Road and turning northwards along Chapel Wood Road and west on Manor Lane. So you have the same plan here outlined in red, showing the aerial view. Again, the main site is on the eastern side of New Ash Green, and you'll see that there is a patchwork of fields across the site, interspersed by woodland blocks. There's also woodland and high hedgerows surrounding the site. The site slopes broadly from east to west. And again, on the western side of New Ash Green, you'll see the point of connection site, which is a broadly circular piece of land around 5 hectares, encircled by trees. Following slide shows key policy designations and constraints on the site. It's a bit of a busy plan, so I'll point out a few things for the benefit of committee. Both the main site and the point of connection site are washed over by greenbelt, and that's the light green annotation. On the main site, you'll see blocks of dark green crossed land, which is blocks of ancient woodland. And the southernmost block, which is outside the site, is also a local wildlife site. There's no listed buildings on the site itself, but hopefully you can see just to the south of Ridley, there is a cluster of listed buildings which are referred to in the committee report. Those are the Ridley Court farm buildings. And in the vicinity of the southern end of the site is Berry's Maple, which is just to the west. The blue annotation running along the western boundary of the site is an area of surface water flood risk. There's also a high pressure gas main that runs through both the point of connection site and the main site on an east to west route. Finally, from this slide, the purple lines through the site and around the point of connection site are public rights of way. So the following slide shows the proposed site layout. You'll see the solar arrays coloured blue in field blocks across the main site. The development on this site covers approximately 44 hectares of the 95 hectare site. Those solar arrays are separated from field boundaries and offset from woodland by a buffer of at least 15 meters. They also, the solar panels also retain the network of public rights of way over the site. You'll see from this plan also that there are areas of the application site that have been left clear of any development. That includes the northern tip of the site, the southern field, shown as field 1, and the eastern fields, field 13, and land just to the west of that. Within the solar fields, there are inverters or pairs of inverters, and the fields would be surrounded by, each of the solar fields would be surrounded by metal security fencing about 2.5 meters high. The main access to the site, to the main site, is in the northwest corner from Hartley Bottom Road, and this is the entrance that will be used, the main entrance that will be used for the operational phase, and the sole entrance to be used for the construction phase. And during construction, vehicles will be directed along Red Hill Road into that entrance. They won't use the narrower lanes surrounding the site. From the access, there will be tracks that link to the main switch room and control room, and other tracks leading through the site into the solar fields and to the inverters. On the point of connection site, there would be an access route running from Manor Lane, zigzagging towards the point of connection site. Sorry, my slides have changed, but it's not showing at the moment. Bear with me. It's not showing. It's not going on to slide view.
This is where we need a Radio 4 continuity announcer.
Sorry for the short pause. My success with technology continues. So here we have the landscaping plan for the main site. Again, you'll see the retention of blocks of woodland across the site and the fields of panels set within them, and boundary vegetation supplemented in places, retained and supplemented in places with additional hedgerow. There'll be additional woodland edge planting around the main switch room site compound in the northwest corner of the site, and further planting in the centre of the site and at the southern end of the site between Solar Field 2 and the listed buildings of Ridley Court Farm. Within the solar fields, the grass would be retained for grazing land. On the field boundaries, a grassland mix would be planted, enhanced with more diverse grass planting. Wildflower meadows would be introduced in the northeast corner, on the western edge, close to Hartley Bottom Road, in the slither of land you can see in the centre of the site, and in certain other areas on the site. Along the public rights of way and between solar fields, there would be additional hedgerow planting and tree planting. This plan shows the tree line, which is a well-established tree line around the point of connection site. Our measurements for tree heights on that boundary suggest they are mature and higher than the equipment that would be put in between them. There would be limited removal of vegetation on the eastern side of that point of connection site to allow the laying of the access road and cabling, which would then be infield following completion of the development. This slide shows details of the solar frames. The frames would be arranged in east-west lines, so face it with the panels facing south across the site. They will be a mix of 3.05 meters high across the majority of the site, but in areas where there is a greater risk of flooding, there'll be a higher offset from the ground, so the solar panels will be 3.45 metres in height. The offset from the ground would allow grazing, sheep grazing with fields. This slide shows the location of the inverters, which are largely positioned they are positioned within the solar fields, some mostly within the centre of them or on the edge. They'll either be on their own or in pairs. They would be set on a stone surface and surrounded by 3.5 metre timber acoustic fencing. Some isolated land regrading would be necessary to create a level surface for those inverters. The images on the right show what an inverter looks like. This slide shows some examples of the arrangement of inverters within the solar fields. You'll see from these plans that there is some localized land regrading, again, to create a level surface for the inverters. As you can see, the equipment would sit in between acoustic fencing. This slide shows the layout and sections through the main switch room and control room. You'll see they essentially look like two large containers with an access track on one side. This compound would be surrounded by acoustic fencing, about 5 meters in height. This slide shows typical fence detail. On the top left is an acoustic timber fence, an example of an acoustic timber fence. As mentioned, around the inverters, they would be 3.5 meters high. Around the switch room compound, they'd be 5 meters high. The central image shows a typical wire fence that would be positioned around the solar fields. And the bottom image shows the treatment of, or the arrangement of solar panels with the metal fence and the hedgerow that would be planted, growing to 2.5 or 3 meters height to provide screening to the solar panels and the fencing. This plan shows the arrangement of the point of connection site with the access track coming in from the east to serve the switching station on the northern part of that site and the substation on the southern part. The site would include equipment, including transformers and switchgear, and it would be surrounded by palisade fencing. This image shows the general arrangement of the switching station, where the structures would be of varying height, rising to a maximum of 7.3 meters. As mentioned, level changes would be required with palisade fencing, sorry, not palisade fencing, gabion walling to support the changing levels. And this shows side elevations, two side elevations of the point of connection site. Substation. On the top image, you can see the west side showing the switch room container with the transformer rising beyond the container to the rear of it. At the bottom is the southern side of the switching station. Again, the images show how levels will be dealt with on that part of the site. Moving on to photographs around the site, you'll be aware from visits that the site is large, so the photos take you around the edge and with some examples of images in the middle of the site. This is the main site entrance on Hartley Bottom Road. It's the view south. You'll see in the distance there's on the right hand side there's the line of trees that bounds Hartley Bottom Road and marks the boundary between Hartley Bottom Road and the site. This is looking back northeast across the main entrance, and you'll see how land rises to the eastern side of the site. Broadly speaking, within this image, you'll see a public right of way post in the centre of that image. Broadly speaking, between that post and the prow of that hill, there would be no panels on the left-hand side, with solar fields on to the right of that post. This image shows the northern tip of the site at the junction of Hartley Bottom Road with Idley Court Road. You'll see a high hedgerow that typically surrounds the site, but land rising to the east on the left-hand side of the image. This image, these images are from the northeastern boundary of the site and the entrance to a public right-of-way that crosses the site. On the left-hand side, you'll see the view into the northern side of the field 15, which would contain solar panels. You'll see on the right-hand side, again, the land falling away. The panels would be well set back from this image into the site, so panels would fall away on the falling land. So there would be some distance with wildflower meadow in the foreground. Moving on to some internal views of the site. The left-hand photograph shows an image from east to west towards the main entrance. And again, the right-hand side shows the northern tip of the site. Again, as referenced, the very northern tip of the site wouldn't contain solar fields, but solar panels would be prominent in the view on the left, but shielded by new hedge planting. Moving further into the site, along the public right-of-way that heads southwards into the site. These images are taken from one of the public rights-of-way and would be filled with solar panels, but with hedgerow and planting surrounding them. Again, moving through the site, another interior view where panels would sit in between the woodland boundaries. Move back to the eastern boundary of the site and New Street Road. The left-hand image is a view southwards on New Street Road, where the panels would be situated on the other side of the high hedgerow on the right. The view on the right is looking northwards along New Street Road, adjacent to Holly Mount, where the solar field would sit on the left-hand side of the hedgerow. The view on the left here is of field 13, where there would be no solar panels. The view on the right is the view from, again, from Rectory Road, looking into the site, where panels and their boundary or their boundary hedgerow would be viewed at a distance of approximately 150 metres. This is a view from one of the public rights-of-way that passes into the site from Rectory Road. And it would be the view towards panel field 10 and 11, which would be viewed from this point at approximately 50-metre distance. The public right-of-way would pass through the solar fields in that setting, with a minimum gap of 15 metres, and that's probably the narrowest point of the gap between fields. These views are representative of the views from the listed Ridley Court farm, looking broadly northwestwards. The solar fields, field 2 would be just beyond the line of trees that are pointed out on the left-hand image. The main difference between these two images is that one is a wintry view and one's a more leafy summer view. Panels would be approximately 200 metres from this point on land that's falling away. You'll have hopefully have seen in the report that mention of Berries Maple, a listed building on the southwest side of the site. This is a view back from Berries Maple, the listed building, towards field 1. This field will have no panels or equipment in it, so the view would remain unaltered. Returning to the edge of the site, these views are along Hartley Bottom Road at its southern end. The left image shows the fairly high and dense tree boundary that lines that road, with the solar farm sitting to the right-hand side of that image. The view on the right is of the entrance to another public right-of-way that crosses between fields 1 and 2. And these photos follow that route into the site where the public right-of-way crosses through those fields. Again, as mentioned, field 1, which would be on the right-hand side of the left image, would have no panels within it, no equipment. On the left-hand side, within field 2, there would be a solar array. Again, there would be hedgerow planting between the public right-of-way and the solar fields. This is perhaps one of the more prominent views of the site from exterior areas. The previous images showed the public right-of-way that enters the site and crosses between fields 1 and 2. To the west of the site, land rises again on the other side of the valley, and as you cross that path, as you enter that path from the top of the field, you can see the solar fields sandwiched between those lines of trees. This is a public right-of-way crossing again from broadly in the centre of the site. Public right-of-way runs then northeastwards across the site. At this point, there is an established public right-of-way and a proposed public right-of-way. The layout retains both of those public rights-of-way, and at this point, the gap between would be planted with wildflower meadow of about 50 metres wide, which would gradually narrow into the site between the solar fields. This image is looking back down Hartley Bottom Road. That public right-of-way that I've just shown is just on the left of that image. And again, looking further north, or moving further north, looking southwards down Hartley Bottom Road, solar fields would be on the left-hand side of that tree line boundary with a few more gaps there. These images show views from New Ash Green and the Red Hill estate on the eastern side. As mentioned in the report, there is some fairly significant tree cover in and around the Red Hill estate, but there would be glimpsed views, certainly from upper floor windows across the solar fields. Moving very briefly onto the point of connection site. This is the view of the eastern side of the point of connection site, which would sit behind those trees. There would be one tree removed to allow access into that. But as mentioned, there would be supplementary infill planting. And this is a view towards that tree line from a southern viewpoint. And these are internal views within the point of connection site. You'll see again that's falling land, hence the need for land levelling. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Apologies for the technical hitches. The full planning assessment and recommendation are set out in committee papers and late observations.
Thank you, Nicola. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Peter Tasker to come and speak, please. When you're ready, Mr. Tasker, you have 3 minutes if you press the button on your microphone.
I speak on behalf of the local residents who strongly oppose this application. More than 3,000 people have signed a petition against it, and over 1,000 objections have been submitted. People are not anti-solar. We support new renewable energy. They simply believe this is the wrong development in the wrong location. The site sits within one of Kent's most beautiful valleys, crossed by well-used public footpaths, and is valued for its open rural character. It occupies a prominent west-facing hillside, making it highly visible within the landscape. If approved, this development would fundamentally change the character of the area for decades. At the heart of tonight's decision is a simple question. Should greater reliance be placed on the detailed, considered, independent expert evidence submitted by professionals on our behalf, on behalf of local residents, or to an officer's report that relies heavily on assessments produced by the applicant and on consultees whose no objection relies on considerations further down the line? As our barrister has explained, the officer's approach is flawed. Independent experts instructed by us have identified inaccuracies and omissions in the applicant's evidence. Where conclusions are based on incomplete and inaccurate information, they should not be accepted. Slide 2, please. Our experts state that this scheme would cause significant harm to landscape character. The existing countryside of fields, woodland, historic field patterns and public rights of way would be transformed by extensive solar arrays, fencing, access tracks and associated infrastructure across sloping field where mitigation is impossible for up to 40 years. This is not temporary in any meaningful sense. There are also serious heritage concerns. The impact extends beyond the individual listed buildings to the wider historic landscape and the setting of multiple heritage assets. National planning policy requires that such harm be given considerable weight. Councillors must consider the evidence on public safety and water protection. Our fire and hydrology experts conclude that the risk of fire over a 40-year period is 100% certain. In a serious incident, contaminated firewater would enter the chalk aquifer special protection zone that supplies drinking water. Our hydrologist warns that once contamination occurs, there is no reliable way to prevent its spread. This would have serious consequences for human health. Additionally, concerns include—
You have 30 seconds, sir.
Include the loss of productivity land and prize-winning dairy herd. This is simply not a planning disagreement. It concerns public safety, drinking water, landscape, heritage, agriculture, and long-term future of our communities. Please protect the aquifer, protect the public, protect local businesses, protect this remarkable landscape. Please vote refuse.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. May I now please ask Conor McNally to come and speak to us, please. And whenever you're ready, so you have 3 minutes.
At the January meeting, I confirmed this project would increase energy security, contribute to net zero and reduce the cost of electricity, all of which are benefits that are afforded substantial planning weight. I noted there is no objection from any statutory consultee and that the officer report was clear in its recommendation to approve the application. In response, objectors provided you with a range of misinformation, and I have responded to two of their main claims now. Firstly, a report that was prepared by the objectors consultant falsely stated that a hydrological risk assessment was required and that without this, there's a risk to water safety. The Environment Agency has reviewed these claims and maintains its position of no objection. Objectors also made claims that there's a significant fire risk, but have provided you with no evidence to support this opinion, with the only examples put forward relating to battery and rooftop solar fires that are not relevant to this decision. Kent Fire and Rescue Service maintains its position of no objection. In January, this committee wanted to refuse the application, but had no justified basis to do so. Members scrambled to try to find a reason to rely on, including openly questioning the competence of statutory regulators. The decision was deferred to allow independent specialists to review if the potential reasons put forward by members could be defended. 6 independent consultants were approached to help. Not one was willing to support your position. The MPPF contains an explicit presumption in favour of sustainable development, unless this committee can identify adverse impacts that significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. None of these have been identified by any independent consultee, and therefore you have no justified or legal basis to refuse the application. But that doesn't mean you can't refuse. You could instead decide to disregard entirely the unbiased position of your own officers, Kent Fire and Rescue and the Environment Agency, and instead base your decision solely on inaccurate reports provided by consultants acting for and paid by the objectors. However, I want to ensure you fully understand the consequences of that approach. Firstly, in terms of stopping or delaying the project, a refusal here will have little impact. Even if consented this evening, we would not start construction until next year, and therefore an appeal process later this year, which I'm confident we would win, would not result in any delay. However, it would cost the council and my company money. On this, I want to be fully transparent with you. If you refuse without any justified reason, we will seek full recovery of our appeal costs from the council, even if you subsequently change your mind and decide not to fight the appeal.
Can we keep quiet, please?
Chair, I'll start that paragraph again. However, it would cost the council and my company money. On this, I want to be fully transparent with you. If you refuse without justified reasons, we will seek full recovery of our appeal costs from the council, even if you subsequently change your mind and decide not to fight the appeal, as you did on the Chimney Solar decision. This is not blackmail, as was suggested by one of your members last time, but would be the direct—
I ask, please keep quiet while the speakers are speaking. Thank you.
I'll just start that sentence.
Please do.
This is not blackmail, as was suggested by one of your members last time, but would be the direct consequence of unreasonable behaviour by this committee. A refusal this evening would therefore have no impact on the project timeline, but is highly likely to cost Sevenoaks around £400,000 in appeal costs. It will not stop the project. I therefore ask that members carefully consider their responsibilities to all residents of Sevenoaks District, not just the vocal minority here tonight, and determine the application in line with planning policy.
Thank you, Conor.
The evidence from— It's not time, Chair. I had to repeat.
We have allowed the extra time.
You haven't, Chair. That's fine. I'll just add it to the
Thank
list
you.
of reasons.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon the parish representative, please, Councillor Jake Scott. So you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Sevenoaks District Council's new local plan was published demanding the building of 1,150 houses per annum. New Ash Green was designated a primary service settlement in the plan with 1,450 houses to be built on the sites shown here in blue, ringing New Ash Green. New Ash Green and the Ash Ward will have at least 12% of the district's new housing in a ward which represents 1.5% of the district's area. Currently, there are around 2,000 housing units across the ward and 6,500 people. That will become about 3,500 units and perhaps 11,000 people when the plan is implemented. You can see from this map that the site of the proposed solar farm, shown in yellow to the east of New Ash Green, will be the last remaining area of green space left undeveloped for residents to enjoy. It is landscape of ancient woodland, fields and lanes that has been in place since the 1600s and is shown on the tithe maps to have been unchanged since the 1760s. It is crisscrossed by well-used footpaths with extensive views down the steep, dry valley. Next slide, please. Sevenoaks District Council's urban design officer has said that the introduction of PV panels, access tracks and associated infrastructure will alter the existing field patterns and introduce industrial elements into a historically agricultural setting. They go on to say that the public rights of way will become more enclosed and would restrict walkers' views of the countryside. Next slide, please. Because the panels would be perpendicular to the slope to maximize sunlight, their placement across the land's contours would create visual discord. A prize-winning dairy herd providing 500,000 litres of milk annually direct to the local community will be lost. It is the only dairy herd within an 8-mile radius. The little shop in Ridley, which supplies its raw milk, will be closed. The Howie family, the agricultural tenants who own the herd and have lived and farmed on the site for the last 73 years, tell me they have had no written notice of the solar development, either from the landowner or the developer. Their lives and livelihoods will be destroyed. In conclusion, given the development of the local plan, there is going to be a huge amount of housing in this area, and residents need their one remaining area of unspoilt green space to enjoy. Given the site's topography and importance, this is the wrong place for this development. If council has mandated four solar panels on each house built for the next 2.5 years of the local plan, that would more than cover the electricity generated with none of the environmental, commercial and amenity harm caused to this ancient landscape. We ask our democratically elected district councillors to reach the same decision as before and reject this development.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to start calling on the local members. Number one, I have Councillor Penny Cole.
Councillors, by way of introduction, I would like to explain the geography of this application. The site itself sits wholly in the ward of Hartley and Hodsall Street, of which I'm one of the ward members, but in the parish of Ashcombe-Ridley. The majority of residents affected by the application live in New Ash Green. The village association owns all the land in New Ash Green and is a major interested party, and they have asked me to read out the following. The New Ash Green Village Association is very disappointed that this application is being reheard in full, despite the majority of councillors voting against the application at the first meeting. The Village Association owns all the amenity land in New Ash Green and will not grant permission for any works on its land. Their consent would imply approval of a scheme that is opposed by most people in New Ash Green. Many people cross Red Hill Road to reach shops, the school and other facilities. The road bisects the village sports fields, which are heavily used by children and adults, especially at weekends. It is not a country lane, which might absorb a limited amount of temporary traffic, like those in the quoted appeal decisions. Construction traffic and road closures would impose an intolerably severe risk of danger and disruption for residents. Traffic diversions would transfer this risk to other parts of the village. The reports understate this risk. The narrow North Ash Road is an important route to the east, West Yoke is used by much westbound traffic. The cable route directly abuts the Village Association's irreplaceable ancient woodlands surrounding New Ash Green, which contribute much to its character. Despite the claim in the addendum report, there is no substantial offset. The proposed mitigation does not guarantee protection. Once lost, the woodlands are lost forever, so this harm carries substantial weight. The Greenbelt protects the original concept of New Ash Green as a village in the countryside. The development would create an industrial landscape next to the village. The Council's Greenbelt assessments confirm that New Ash Green is an historic development in town planning. The concept of Greybelt was introduced to identify sustainable locations for housing close to railway stations. Here, the Greenbelt strongly meets the purpose of preserving the setting and special character of this acknowledged historic development, so it can't be Greybelt. This proposal would be inappropriate development with substantial harm and weight. The main site has many readily accessible, valuable recreational walking routes. Their character would change from attractive open countryside with wide rural views to an industrial landscape surrounded by solar panels and buildings. The amenity value of the footpaths for New Ash Green residents would be destroyed for at least 40 years, a lifetime for many people. This is much worse than moderate harm and weight. We ask members to reapply the planning balance. It is not unreasonable to refuse planning permission due to the severe cumulative impact of the many adverse impacts. This will support the wishes of the vast majority of New Ash Green residents. I'd just like to make a couple of comments of my own. Field 1 and 13 are the two fields left for the tenant farmer. These are quite a distance from the farm itself and in opposite directions. You may have seen some of the pictures on that were shown. Field 1 is on a very steep gradient, so we question whether cattle would be able to be grazed there at all. I've also got found the CPRE have come up with
30 seconds,
a few comments on solar farms themselves. Bird and bat deaths are common as they mistake the glass for water. The land is degraded with little potential for biodiversity as half of it will be in permanent shadow, and rainwater runoff creates set channels without proper dispersal, and that's particularly appropriate for this application as it's on a slope. Topsoil is removed and cleaning materials can contaminate the soil. Lots of other objections as well.
Nicole, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to call upon Councillor Madam Perry to come and speak, please. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
As a councillor, I have always been proud to sit here and represent my ward. It is a privilege to be entrusted with the voices of the people, businesses and communities we serve. Today, however, I sit in front of you with a heavy heart. I'm genuinely saddened that the residents of New Ash Green have once again been forced to go through this process. It is a shame that local people, businesses and community groups have had to spend so much time, effort and emotional energy defending the place they call home. This appeal is not simply about a planning application. It is about the future of rural community, the protection of local jobs, and the sustainability of businesses that have supported our area for generations. I would like to speak to you about the local economy. In order to that, I want to focus on 3 businesses. Throughout this appeal, we have heard a great deal about evidence, but I would respectfully say this. If you look for evidence, look at the gallery. The residents who have taken time away from their families, their work, and their daily lives to be here today are evidence. The people who live in our village know what is best for our village. They know its roads, its countryside, its businesses, and its way of life. They are not statics on the report. They are the people who will live within the consequences of this decision long after this hearing has ended. They are asking for something very simple: fairness, common sense, and justice for future generations. As I drove here today in the rain, some of New Ash Green narrow roads already flooding. It is sensible to place a major solar development there when our community is already facing these issues. I would like to speak about the impact this proposal will have on our local economy. Firstly, Glover's Farm. The Glover family has farmed their land for generations. Their award-winning butchery has diversified beyond traditional agriculture into retail and equestrian services. It serves not only individual customers, but also local businesses. It is an established rural enterprise that depends on agricultural land, countryside access, local supply chains, and customer visits. Mr. Stephen Glover has submitted evidence highlighting that approximately 80% of the traffic access in his farm, shops, deliveries, and agricultural operations relies on North Ash Road. He has warned that the scale of construction traffic associated with this development could be catastrophic for these businesses and the jobs it supported. Secondly, Ridley Court Farm. This historic farm is part of a landscape that has been farmed for centuries. Today, it operates a successful unpasteurized milk business and farm shop supporting local producers and craftspeople. Its owner, Maggie Hall, has explained that the uncertainty surrounding this proposal has already affected her ability to invest in the future of her business. She has also stated that the loss of agricultural land would effectively cut her business in half. These are not speculative concerns. They come directly from respected local business owners whose livelihoods depend on this land. But this is not just about two businesses. Local businesses throughout our area rely on customers being able to reach them, deliveries arriving on time, and staff traveling safely on roads that are already under pressure.
30
Large
seconds,
solar
Councillor.
developments bring lengthy construction period, heavy goods, vehicle movements, and disruption to rural road networks. When access becomes difficult, customers go elsewhere. Deliveries are delayed, costs increase, small businesses suffers. Many of you know that businesses in New Ash Green have already faced decades of underinvestment. We are currently fighting to protect key local services, including our Morrisons and post office. Our local economy is already fragile.
Thank you. That's time, Councillor Perry. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Manston, please. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. When this application was first heard, I spoke to you about water, and tonight I'm here to do the same. The site is located above a Principle 3 chalk aquifer within Source Protection Zone 1 and 2, which provides drinking water to at least 50,000 people. The basis of my objection to this solar farm is the health and safety of these 50,000 people and their right to safe, clean drinking water. In order to assess this, we need to consider 4 questions. 1, what is the risk to drinking water? While the cadmium tellurium compound is highly stable and insoluble in water, AZOM, the leading online publication for the materials science community, says that broken and fire damaged panels that are subsequently exposed to water can allow cadmium and tellurium to leach. So in the case of a fire, the water used to put the fire out could contain cadmium, which would then run into the soil and into the aquifer. 2, would it be possible to contain that fire water? Well, GWP Consultants, which are an independent earth and water resources consultancy, they have strong links with research universities and appear at expert witnesses in public inquiries and high court hearings. Their head of water management, Clive Carpenter, says that these drainage schemes provide no ability whatsoever to be sealed and contain accidental spills, leaks or firewaters, and hence prevent these substances infiltrating into the underlying strata. Number 3, what is the likelihood of a fire then at this site? Well, Jeremy Ransdon, Honorary Professor of Nanotechnology at the Department of Biomedical Research at the University of Buckingham, says that based on existing solar PV installations, some kind of fire at this location is a certainty over the projected 40-year lifetime of the installation. And finally, 4, how would fire water affect the aquifer, and what would it do to anyone drinking from it? Well, Science Direct, which is a database of over 18 million scientific and medical publications from more than 4,000 academic journals, they report that cadmium, unlike some other heavy materials that precipitate out or bind tightly to bedrock, this one has a high mobilization potential in groundwater, making it notoriously difficult to contain once it enters a subsurface aquifer. The National Centre of Biotechnology Information tells us that the effects of drinking cadmium polluted water include kidney and bone damage, carcinogenic effects, and cardiovascular and metabolic issues. Given the high risk of water contamination and the added pressure of an existing water crisis in the southeast, this application should be rejected as it is contrary to paragraph 96, which is to enable and support healthy lives, and 102, which is promoting public safety. Thank you.
And now Councillor Perry Cole, please. Whenever you're ready, you have 4 minutes.
Dear committee members, you have heard from the previous speakers who have, in the short space of time available to them, tried to justify why the application before you this evening should be refused. Back in January, this committee was minded to refuse permission and, if anything, the reasons for doing so again this evening are just as, if not stronger than before, in no small part due to additional documentation provided through no-nags from independent experts from the legal profession and others representing their respective and associated fields of expertise. Their compelling and persuasive arguments cover topics as diverse as loss of amenity and risks associated with heritage, water and fire. Other speakers have commented on the risk to the few local businesses that operate in the immediate vicinity, affected either by having their land acreage substantially reduced, thus likely to permanently impact their business model, or by restricting access to and from businesses for staff, customers, deliveries, or creating additional challenges by those simply trying to conduct their day-to-day business. You will have read the latest reports on the planning portal that justifiably question and challenge views represented by officers in support of the rationale behind their decision to recommend the application. Inexplicably, in one document, the applicant has commented that there are no surrounding communities, sites or infrastructure that may be impacted as a result of an incident, nor of any others who might be at risk in the event of a fire. I'm sure that those residents of Red Hill Wood, living as they do just across the road to Field 5, feel consoled by these comments. We have heard, and you will be aware, that one of the many reasons for objecting to the application concerns the visible amenity or loss of amenity. This should not, however, be confused with the term view. This location, forming part of a charming, unspoilt valley as it does, represents perhaps the last and only true open land that residents of New Ash Green have access to. Remember too that New Ash Green residents represent around 5% of the entire population of Sevenoaks District. The loss of this natural environment, other than visually, cannot be overstated. This is an area where people can break free of their urban environment, walk, stop and admire the surroundings and be at peace, an opportunity to reflect, unwind and appreciate life. There will be a benefit to their well-being, mental as well as physical, and health in general. Gazing across the open vista, rather than what I fear will become a feeling of being hemmed in by tall fences and taller hedges that will prevent distance viewing and create an urbanisation of the natural landscape, albeit not of brick and stone, but of glass and aluminium, coupled with the surreal feel of a man-made environment trying to imitate nature. The feeling of enclosure and isolation will not be helped by the fact that phone signal is almost non-existent around large parts of the site, and people somehow feel safer in the open rather than in corridors or, in effect, roofless tunnels. We are all too aware of current global events that highlight the desire to become less energy dependent on others and the government's desire to push through their agenda on alternative energy sources. But because this is alleged to be the only site available at the moment that can be converted to solar and connected to the grid, please do not let this site become a byword for the phrase, marry in haste, repent at leisure. Let us be clear, this is not simply a case of NIMBYism. Seldom, if ever, has or will this committee receive such a volume of specialist and expert impartial advice provided to support what nearly everyone in New Ash Green instinctively knows, that this is the
30
wrong
seconds.
location for development and that as such the application should be refused. With so many counter-arguments raised by experts in the respective fields, can the officer's assessments be correct in every single instance? This is the committee's opportunity now and your duty to recognise and acknowledge the level of specialist advice provided, apply such weighting as you see fit, and to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. I was planning on offering a comfort break once the questions and answers had finished, but 5 minutes. Right, it is now just after 1:15. We will come back at just after 20 past. You have 5 minutes. Thank you. Everything is suspended until all members are back in place. Right, members, that we are now back in court. Can all members please take their seats? Sorry? She's the last one, I think, isn't she? Yeah, she is. Is that the last one, Charlie? Who? Yeah, yeah. Do I ask? Yeah, okay. Right, members, thank you. First of all, can I just ask all members, please, all members to confirm that they didn't have conversations with reference to this application with anybody outside of the... That's absolutely fine. It's just to make sure that nobody's had any extraneous conversations. And I'd also like to confirm that Connor, you did have your extra 10 seconds and the timer was paused during the breaks in the conversation. Just for clarity, I did make sure that it happened, sir. Right. The floor is now open for questions of our speakers. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a small one for the applicant. I was asking one of the officers when we did our site visit as well, so I thought I would clarify it with you. With respect to fire measures at the solar panels, can you tell me what they are? I mean, do you have fire extinguishers there, or do you wait for the fire brigade? I'm just curious what fire measures are in place.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. So the starting point in any response to your question is that the Kent Fire and Rescue Service have not objected to this application, and they are the body with the specialist knowledge to advise you. And therefore, if you are to follow due process, you need to take their position into account, unless you have other evidence.
This is not cantankerous. I'm just merely asking you what they are. That's all. I'm not being aggressive with you.
And I'm not being aggressive with you either, Councillor Ball. I'm responding to your question and explaining to you the due process that you need to follow based on the last meeting that we had. Yes, we do have fire measures in place. We have a fire response plan, which will be agreed with Kent Fire and Rescue. We do not have on-site fire extinguishers. They are not required.
Thank you. And can I just remind members, these are questions of clarity of the speakers going forward. Thank you. Councillor Hudson, you were next, I think.
I've got a couple of questions for the applicant, if I may. I've sort of put mine into sections. So can you tell us what effect the loss of the BESS has on the viability of the project? As there's now no capacity for storage, doesn't that considerably lower the value of the project at national level?
No, it doesn't. So the government's Clean Power 2030 action plan requires an increase in solar generation, excluding any BESS, from the current level of approximately 20 gigawatts to 47 gigawatts by 2030. This project has a grid offer to connect in that timeframe, and therefore is critical to the delivery of that plan.
May I ask another question of the applicant?
You may.
Can I ask, was site-specific information supplied to the Environment Agency?
I don't know the answer to that question, Councillor. I didn't engage with the Environment Agency. Your officers did when they consulted, but my understanding
That might be a
is that it
question
would
for
have
the
been.
officers, Councillor Hudson. Yeah. Councillor Darrington.
Just a very quick one, please. Looking at the sites, how many workers will be on site at any one time, approximately? Roughly how many workers will be on site at any one time? And where have their vehicles be parked?
Is the question for during the operation of the site or on the construction of the site?
Construction of the site.
On the construction of the site.
Forgive me, I don't have the answer exactly to hand. My recollection, like obviously throughout the course of the construction of the sites, the number of workers varies. My recollection is that it's up to something like 100 workers at the maximum, but perhaps I can find that detail for you.
Would you be content with an answer after the meeting, Councillor Darrington?
Partly, yes, I do appreciate that, but interested to know where the 100 workers will put their cars.
Fair question. Councillor Darrington, actually, I believe that's probably a question better placed to our officers who will actually have the information to give you. So if you want to hold on to that question until we have questions of the officer, then we can make sure you get your answer.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor White, then Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I've got a question to Councillor Manon Perry. You were talking about the businesses that are operating in the area and the impact. You particularly mentioned Glover's Farm. Thank you. You were saying about the possible potential impact to their activities. Out of interest, how many employees do they have?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Stephen Glover has submitted evidence highlighting that approximately 80% of the traffic accessing his farm, shops, deliveries, and agricultural operations relies on North Ash Road.
Sorry, she asked how many?
Roughly around, I think, 80 to 85, 100, I say. Yeah, 80 to 100, roughly around.
Thank you. Yes, you may.
So with that number of employees at that business, do we know what the potential impact might be to them? Are they going to be able to get to their businesses? Are they going to be laid off? You know, we're looking at the economic impact of this area.
Yeah, that's why I said if you go through the Mr. Glover's submitted evidence, he has clearly said what effects has done for his business, especially for his the farm and shops and deliveries and the workers who works there.
Thank you. Councillor Ball, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tasker, please, I've got a couple of questions for you. Of course, you're the applicant and yourself have sent us some all the councillors here a number of things to read. You mention in one of them, you say that groundwater protection is not the Environment Agency consideration. Can you expand on that, please? And I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Yes, it's not within their remit. If this was quarrying or digging for oil, then they would have that remit. But as it currently stands for this type of application, it is not within their remit. And that's under the town and country planning rules.
May I ask another question as well?
You may.
And also, so did the EA go beyond their obligations in this case, or did they do what the EA should be doing?
Well, they did what they were supposed to be doing.
Councillor Ball, I'm not sure that's a question of clarification, really. That's perhaps a question that might be coming up in debate rather than clarification.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, it's not, because we've actually had a lot of correspondence from both this person here and the applicant as well. And all the councillors here have read it, as we've read the most of the, the report as well. And this is basically, we've all taken this into consideration, so we need clarification on this, please. It's quite normal.
I thought that what you were asking for was an opinion. You said, have the EA gone beyond its remit?
Well, yeah. In other words, have they gone beyond their obligations? I haven't asked for an opinion. Have they or haven't they?
Mr. Chairman, whether the EA has or has not gone beyond its obligation, if it's a technical question, that might be an appropriate one for officers in terms of the consultation process that was gone through in terms of referring matters to the EA.
Yes, but I read it on his report, not on the officer's report. So therefore, surely I'm entitled to ask him.
I'm not saying that it's irrelevant to his submission, but it sounds like it's more matter for officers.
I'll ask the officers later. And I have one other question for you as well. This committee in January, whenever it was, were concerned with the aquifer, and perhaps they still are. And basically, it seems, according to the report we have now, we don't need a detailed report on the aquifer. You have supplied us with one. What I'm asking is that I think actually Councillor Manston did ask some of this as well, but I just wanted it from you. I say from the horse's mouth, if you don't mind me saying so. If things go wrong, what could happen to the aquifer? That's basically what I want to know. If things go wrong, what's the worst case or the minimum case scenario that could happen?
Is that question directed to me? Yep.
The tasker as well.
Yep, sure. Well, it was stated earlier on in one of the speakers that there was no evidence submitted with regard to fire. Well, Professor Ramsden has produced a complete document on this. And as he says, the likelihood of a fire on the site in the solar panels over the 40-year period is 100% certain. He then goes on to state the amount of heavy metals that would mix with the firewater in the event of any fire, which would get into the chalk and into the Special Protection Zone 1 underneath there in the aquifer. And he states that it would have harm to human life. He also goes on to say that in circumstances where the fire would spread, it could require the evacuation of New Ash Green. So the statement that there was no evidence submitted to support that is incorrect, because here is the document and it is on the Sevenoaks portal. Thank you.
Councillor Hudson and then Councillor Haslam.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a traffic management question, and I'm wondering if Councillor Perry-Cole can answer that for me, or whether I'll have to wait for officers.
Well, unless we know what the question is.
Let's try. The figures in the report for two-way movements, both during Monday to Friday and Saturday, total 312 two-way movements a week. So my question is, do we have an estimate for the traffic in connection with cable laying? And what would that be? And do we have figures for traffic on current use
Councillor
along
Hudson,
the
I
road
don't
from
think that's
farms
relevant.
and business? And
Councillor
I think
Hudson,
Terry mentioned it.
I don't think it's a relevant question because it isn't actually part of the planning application. I'm being informed.
The traffic is, it's in the report. Traffic generation is in the report.
Not the cable route, it's not.
Sorry?
Not the cable route, it's not.
But that has a huge impact on traffic for the village, surely, along those roads.
It does, you're quite right, but that is not a relevant planning issue. That's the
Well, could Councillor Cole give us any estimates for the local
Councillor
businesses?
Hudson, can I just ask you to hang on 1 minute while we have a legal confab?
It's really
Yes. Right, okay. I'm being informed that there are some very complex legal issues over this, and it would be more helpful if an officer answered the question than Councillor Cole did.
Okay, but could Councillor Cole answer for the local business traffic, which I believe he referred to in his speech?
He did.
Chairman, thank you. And thank you for the question. I haven't got exact figures, but I'm aware that a figure of around maybe 1,000 vehicle movements a week, perhaps towards Glovers, and then maybe 1,500 a week in total along Hartley Bottom Road. But please take that with a degree of stretch either side.
Thank you. Councillor Haslam, you have a question.
Yes, I've got a question for, I think it's Mr. McNally, the agent. You mentioned a potential costs of £400,000 in appeal if this was refused tonight. Can you explain how that's calculated or the basis for that, please?
If you decide to refuse the application, you are then required to defend your position at appeal. To do that, you will need to appoint consultants to defend your position. Like to date, you haven't been able to find one that can defend the position put forward in January, but you might be able to find one. That will cost the council money. You'll also, if we are successful in our cost claim, have to cover our costs. And the £400,000 in total is based on our experience of past costs for appeals.
Your
experience.
Your experience, but not necessarily it. I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's no substance behind it that you can provide factual evidence.
Well,
was that a question or a statement, Councillor Haslam?
It's a question.
Well, of course there's, Councillor. Based on my experience of similar appeals on similar grounds, these are the costs that are typically incurred when you total the cost of a barrister on both sides and the cost of independent experts. So my substantive experience and evidence is based on past appeals. I don't understand how you don't think that's substantive.
My question, if I put it in other ways, if you look at your own costs for an appeal that you lost, how much did that cost you?
I've never lost an appeal.
I think we're getting into the grounds of the esoteric with that one. I think we've run its course. Councillor Malone, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Mr. McNally as well. Based on your last answer, you've obviously had a number of projects in the past that you've taken through this sort of process. What level of local objection have you seen on other projects?
It depends, Councillor. Sometimes less, sometimes more than this. But the level of local objection is not determinative of your decision. Your decision has to be based on planning evidence and material considerations. And if you were to disagree with your officers, you need to justify your decision.
You wish to come back, Councillor Malone?
Yeah, thank you. I understand that, but thank you for the reminder of our process. In terms of the number of objections that you're seeing in this instance, can I just ask you for your sort of personal reflections on the volume of negative response that you're seeing from the local community?
I don't have any comment, Councillor. I don't even know if the objections are from the local community. Some will be, but some will not be. It's quite often what happens on schemes that are controversial. They get sent around to numerous people outside the community whose life is to object to schemes of this type. For example, like the CPRE.
Can I just remind members that paragraph 181 does actually fulfill the statement that the level of volume doesn't affect what we make as a decision. We have to make it purely and entirely on planning grounds. Councillor Granville, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. This is another question for Conor McNally. The conditions that the officers have put on the approval of this, number 21, and we've talked about this at the last time. This came up last time. No development shall commence until the developer submitted evidence to the local planning authority, and this has been approved, confirming that rights to install cabling within the public highway or other third-party land in order to deliver the cable route connection defined within the application submission have been secured. And I'd like to know how far down the process you are at the moment of getting those permissions from New Ash Green residents. I understand it's private land that you need to cross.
Thank you, Councillor. As I explained last time, we do not need the permission from New Ash Green Village Association. and we've provided a legal opinion to your officers that confirms this. We understand they've taken their own advice that also confirms this position. I have heard the claim numerous occasions that the position that we put forward is incorrect, but I've yet to see a legal opinion from the objector group that confirms that we are incorrect. And there's a good reason for that, and that is that law firms do not typically misrepresent themselves in public.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no more, there is. Councillor Darrington.
Last and probably least. Question for Penny Cole, please, Councillor Cole. You mentioned in your presentation that the village owns the land. What impact could that have?
Well, in submission, they said they wouldn't give any permission to put anything on their own land. Obviously, there is this discrepancy with the highway. Obviously, they own the land under the highway, but there is I think the applicant has suggested that they can get approval for that, and that's a point that needs to be debated and thrashed out. But the rest of the village, the whole of the village, the footpaths, the woodland is all owned by the village association.
And if there are no more questions of our speakers, I now...
Chair, please, may I correct something may I correct something I said to Councillor White?
Correct something?
Yes, correct something I
Yes.
said to Councillor White, because Mr. Glover has stated regarding job losses, that is highly likely the businesses will not survive the impact of construction and will lead to the loss of at least 25 jobs. Just want to correct it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that fully answer your question, Councillor White?
Yeah, that's useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. In which case then we have exhausted questions of the speakers, and I now open the floor to questions of the officer. And I have one which I would actually really rather like to ask before we get stuck into everything else. I made a note of it here. Could you possibly comment on the slide that we were shown by the parish council speaker with the overlay on it, please, Nicola?
Yes, I believe you're referring to the photo montage image.
Exactly that, the one with all the panels over the...
Yes, so I understand that is taken from the photographic survey work that the objector group had commissioned on their behalf. It appears to be a properly produced photo montage image from within the centre of the site. So in that sense, it's from a public right of way with, I think, grub wood to behind the image. So in that sense, it is it appears to be a properly made image. It's from the centre of the site, so it gives the most direct views of solar fields. And what I would, the only provision I'd make about that image is that it doesn't show the vegetation to be planted in front of the panels, which are proposed on the proposal plans.
Thank you. In case anyone was wondering, sometimes when we get photo montages, they're not entirely easy to decipher or even to work out whether they're right or wrong. But in this case, thank you for that clarification. Right. Questions from the floor. Councillor Hudson first, Councillor White second.
Sorry, I have a couple of questions of the officers and I'll have a couple more later. In paragraph 71 and 72 of your report, you appear to have had little success in getting comprehensive legal advice, though the New Ash Green Solar Group appear to have managed that. However, it does say that one company said they could advise us on the landscape issue. Can you tell me why this wasn't taken up? Because the effect on the landscape is quite a huge argument here. It's an important part of this application, and advice even on that would have been very welcome by members.
Okay, if you could just give me a moment to reach the right paragraph, because I know that's already in the report. So paragraph 66 of the report says that in accordance with the committee resolution, officers did not seek to appoint consultants to produce new evidence on the harms identified by members. We were looking for information about the particular concerns raised by members in the committee, and that's set out in paragraph 67. So those paragraphs read as a whole explain what we asked of those consultants and what we wish to get back from them. Members raised a number of different issues. So we might have been able to achieve some information on the landscape harm, but that would have been in isolation. Members asked us to look at a whole variety of issues, and those would have needed to be considered in the wider planning balance with the other benefits identified in the report and the scheme. So it would have potentially skewed the information that we put back, which is why we were seeking information on all of those issues together. I also need to, if you don't mind, correct something in your initial question. You said we couldn't get legal advice. That's not correct. And I'd refer you to paragraph 12 of the addendum report. We did seek counsel's advice on the issues raised at committee, and the context of that advice, which we have received, have informed the body of the report, but are not incorporated in it. And that's so that we can ensure that legal privilege is not compromised and to allow the report to remain fully publicly visible. So officers have seen it, and it's impacted on how we've set the report up and the information we provided, but it's not quoted, it's not referred to, and it's not in front of members.
Would it not have helped members to have seen that even as yellow papers?
Thank you, Chairman. I think members will be aware, particularly in light of some recent council meetings, that the council's position has been very much to protect legal privilege, which does mean that we try to use it to inform the report, but not provide it directly to members. There are all sorts of complications that can arise if legal privilege is accidentally waived.
May I have the question from earlier for the officers, please?
Of course you may. Your patience will be rewarded.
Was site-specific information supplied to the Environment Agency?
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. The Environment Agency would have seen the full planning application submission. So that would include the applicant's full flood risk and drainage report. That includes an analysis of site conditions, of topography, of geology. The Environment Agency would have their own database of conditions across the area and region. So they would have had access to all of those reports.
Councillor White, you were next, followed by Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I've got two questions just for clarity. When we've spoken about the public rights of way, we've mentioned 15 metres at its widest. Sorry.
That was a nice quick answer, wasn't it?
Was, definitely. The second question I had was, we spoke about the fencing and the hedgerow. How high does that hedgerow aim to be, and what is the growth rate of whatever the plants that are envisaged putting in there? I'm interested into how long is that visual impairment going to be seen as opposed to the fence?
Okay, so at this time, we don't have full details. We know where hedgerow will be planted, and we know that from the drawings, the intention is for that hedgerow to grow 2.5, 3 metres high. We have a condition on landscaping, and with our landscaping condition, we would require a certain maturity of hedgerow plant to be provided. So it gives some immediate screening. We also look for details including species and density of planting to cover those issues. I'm afraid I don't know how quickly a hedgerow grows to that height. It will depend on its starting point. But but I think it's fair to say that the impact of the solar farm on day zero will be far greater than in 10 years' time, 5 or 10 years' time, and that's something
Can I
that
keep
is
it quiet in the gallery, please?
quite often discussed within appeal decisions, how the impacts are kind of harsher on, as I say, day zero than further into the scheme, and those impacts gradually reduce.
Councillor Ball, you were next, and then Councillor Granville.
Yes, firstly, just Councillor Hudson's query just now that Alison replied to. You mentioned that you didn't want to accept that one lot of legal advice because it might skew the application or something. Did I not say that?
You said legal advice. The legal advice was different.
All right, so sorry. Pardon me if I got the terminology wrong, but anyway, at the moment, if we look at paragraph 67, there are what 5 items: landscape, farm, amenity, heritage, flood risk, and water risk of fire from solar panels that we might. I'm just saying might want to reject this application with. Now, it is quite frequent when we have these things. I'm not saying we reject things every day. We don't. But sometimes it happens that we do. And we have had on a number of occasions that we have had, for example, 3 reasons why we might have wanted to reject something and then done it on 2 or 1. So therefore, what I'm saying is I think in retrospect, and I mean this with all respect, I really do, because I respect what you do, but I think it would have been prudent to have got the advice for the 1 item in that regard, and I don't think people would have seen it in isolation. That's my first question.
I feel well. I think we've answered that question in those paragraphs. We followed the route that members asked us to do at that committee. The report sets out what the minutes asked of us. We did what the members asked, and that information hasn't been brought forward. Members are being asked to sort of determine the application based on the information, the evidence submitted. Members didn't ask us to go and find evidence to base their refusal on. They asked us to consider the robustness of the evidence already in front of them, and that's what the report does. I know we didn't have all of the information members had hoped for, but I believe the report has set out what they asked us to do, what you asked us to do.
Sorry, I don't agree with that. I'll carry on with my other question for the meantime. I think we should have actually got that information from them.
Can we keep that for debate, Councillor Ball?
Well, okay, and I will say so during debate as well. I'd just like to go back briefly to you suggested I refer this to the officer, and a point I made to I wanted to make to Mr. Tasker. I said that this, when we had our meeting in January, I think this committee was quite emphatic. I happen to remember that because I think I was speaking on it, and concerning the damage to the aquifer, etc. And that was a serious concern. And we know that the Environmental Agency is a statutory consultee, but they only have limited things that they have to answer for. And I think we said that our constituents expect us as councillors to basically to look into things properly. This is really important. And as I said last time, we have an extra onus of care concerning people's water supply. Okay, as Councillor Manson has pointed out, we have a shortage of water now in our area, and we can't afford to lose water for 50,000 people. So what I'm saying is I really believe it was prudent, and I believe this committee made it clear that we wanted clarification on the other report that we'd seen, and that we wanted you to clarify that their information that had been given to us by Mr. Tasker's colleagues, that it was okay. And I'm very disappointed that we haven't got this. I think it was actually extremely important. I believe this committee made it clear it was very extremely important. We wanted that.
So I'll focus on the question part of that comment. Page 57 is a copy of the minutes. Members might wish to refresh their memories. It was resolved that the application be deferred for further legal advice and advice from consultants to review the robustness of the potential grounds of refusal. Members did not ask us to seek additional evidence to support the issues raised in the debate in January. From that point of view, I believe officers have done what members asked of us. Just going to refer back to which I'm on. So it was paragraph 181 was mentioned by earlier in this meeting, which is, sorry, I'm jumping around lots of different documents. Let me just go and find that. So paragraph 181 refers to the National Planning Policy Guidance and provides advice for members when considering planning applications.
Sorry, I'm just looking at Councillor Hudson's, I'm leaning over her, but of the minutes on page.
So I'm on paragraph 181, which is page 48.
Page 48 in your papers, Councillor Ball.
So having read out the resolution from the January committee and what members asked of us, you'd also ask the question about the evidence from the community and your members' role in the process. So local authority members, it states at paragraph 181, are involved in planning matters to represent the interests of the whole community. But when taking decisions on planning applications, they must do so in accordance with the development plan, material considerations, and look at the planning merits. I would also refer you to paragraph 104, which talks about the role of consultees in the planning process, particularly statutory consultees in that context, which is the Environment Agency, and they hold greater significance in the planning balance and the views of others commenting on these issues, which is relevant when considering if alternative views will stand up to scrutiny. So when you look at the papers as a whole, whilst members may have concerns about some of the information in front of them because of the issues raised by objectors, in the planning balance, we're also decision makers need to put weight in terms of the statutory status of the Environment Agency and consultees, and saying that they are wrong is a difficult position to take. So sorry, I'm not being very eloquent here because there were a lot of issues in your comment. Sorry, Nicola might be able to sort of dig me out of my mess.
Yeah, I said, just to kind of to help you understand, I think it's incorrect to say that the Environment Agency are not responsible for groundwater protection. That is that is within their remit, and hopefully what the addendum paper does is provide clarification as to the approach that the Environment Agency take when they consider applications, and I can sit here and tell you that with applications where they are concerned about pollution, they will object, and we have experience of that. So the approach they take is a precautionary risk-based approach. They will ask for more information where they are unsure, and they will object, set out in paragraph 110 of the papers. They will object or they will oppose new developments via the development planning process where there is an inherent hazard to groundwater. So we have two papers. We have the applicant's submission, we have submissions from the objector, and members are in a difficult position because you have to decide which one is right, which one is wrong, because there are differences. We look to the statutory consultees to provide us with a steer on that, and that's the process we've gone through.
I'll refer members to paragraph 97, which is particularly helpful. Environment Agency is the regulatory body with responsibility for water quality and resources, and And on groundwater protection, the website states the Environment Nation must protect groundwater sources used to supply drinking water from pollution. So that's a really strong and clear remit.
Sorry, I don't want to flog a dead horse. In fact, I don't think it's dead yet at all. We spoke about this last time, and I believe the committee did make it, very, very clear that we expected comment on this report. In fact, I think the chairman, I listened to it afterwards. I even asked the chairman afterwards, I said, would these things be considered? And he said, yes, it's in the domain. We will be looking at it as well. If we look at the minute, page 57, it's right near the end of, I think it's the minutes. It says, in their discussion, members concluded whether the application should be refused. However, it was noted that further legal advice and advice from consultants to review the robustness of the potential grounds for refusal would assist members. Members considered in their debate landscape harm, amenity, heritage, flood and water risks, including the potential impact on water supply and risks from the water, risk of fire from the solar panels and local policies on amenity, landscape, heritage, etc., etc. Now, the chairman, he did actually, I asked specifically afterwards, would this be taken into account? And I think this committee expected some sort of comments on this. And I really believe, I'm sorry that I think it should have been done. I just said, I think we as councillors, we as a council have a duty to our constituent, that we have to really look out for really, really important things. And surely our water supply is. Thank you.
So paragraph 89 states that following the January committee, the Environment Agency was advised of the committee's decision to defer the application, including the concerns expressed regarding pollution of the principal aquifer, and they were invited to provide further input. A response by email of the 4th of March 2026 confirmed that they had no additional comments to make beyond their previous representations. And as set out in the report, we did seek consultants' advice, and they were not able to provide that advice for members.
Did they have sight of what the report had from the, I can't remember what the name of the from New Ash Green?
Yes, all of the information that was submitted on public access remains live because the application is not determined. I provided guidance to those firms about how to find that information and how to search for it. They had access to all of the papers that members had in front of them. So they had a significant volume of information had they wished to provide the advice to members.
So we don't know if they actually looked at it then?
Don't think that was a question really, was it?
Pretty obvious. It's probably the truth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Granville, you had a question, followed by Councillor Hudson.
Thank you. This is from the sublime to the ridiculous, maybe. I just want a little bit of detail on the security fencing around the solar panel fields, because I understood that the land was going to be used for sheep. How will the sheep get through the security panels? I mean, or are they grazing in the corridors in between?
Yes, so they would be grazing within corridors between panels, which is something that has been practiced with other solar farms. There is a condition that seeks a grazing and grassland management plan, so that would set out more details. I'm afraid I don't know the practicalities of it, but yes.
Thank you. If I could just come back, I understood, and again, this was from the previous meeting, that the solar panels were too low for cattle to graze under, but fine for sheep. So I sort of thought that the whole area, including the solar panel fields, would be available for sheep grazing. But if it's just the corridors and the fields that aren't being
yeah, sorry, I probably didn't make myself clear. I think I'm not saying that it would solely be within the solar fields.
So the farmer would need to let the sheep in and out of the solar fields regularly, I suppose. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. I think we're talking about the practicalities of shepherding, which I don't think comes into the remit of this committee terribly, but I do understand the question.
I just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
all still possible.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Councillor Hudson, then Councillor Purvis.
Can I go back to the traffic management then? We've had a figure now for the current use for the farms and businesses along that road. And we've got the estimate of traffic management from the construction in the report. Do we have an estimate for traffic in connection with the cable laying? Obviously, the firm has done this elsewhere. Have we any kind of guesstimate of what that might be?
So just to go over, just kind of go back over as old ground a little bit, just so you have the full picture. The cable laying process would be carried out by an independent distribution network operator. So the full details of the programme and sequencing haven't been pinned down and are not fully set out. Within the main report, the original report to January's committee, there were figures of construction, generated construction traffic at paragraphs 459 and 460. So at paragraph 460, it shows that the applicant's prediction is that there could be approximately 38 two-way vehicles per weekday and 34 two-way vehicle movements on Saturdays to the main site, and 15 two-way vehicle movements per weekday and 13 on a Saturday to the point of connection site. So that has been assessed against the existing traffic levels on the site, and for the most part the change in traffic levels is around 2%. There is a greater
Can we have silence while the officer's speaking, please?
There is a greater percentage increase as you get to North Ash Road and Hartley Bottom Road of around 8%, but the general industry benchmark is that traffic changes below 10% are likely to be negligible. So then we take into account the cable route. We don't know the detail, but discussions with the applicant suggest that it might put one or two additional HGV vehicles on Red Hill Road.
I've asked, please, can we keep the noise down upstairs and let the officer concentrate on what she's saying?
We don't have the exact detail, but we do have a broad assessment of how that cabling process would work. And on that basis, we feel comfortable that the traffic generated wouldn't be severe, which is the test in the MPPF. And it's a position that the Highway Authority are happy with.
Can I just say then, because I've just done a quick run on the figures, we've heard that the existing current use for the businesses across there, Councillor Cole said, was about 1,000 a week. You've just given me figures that add up to 293, which is coming up more than 25%, up towards 30% of that, and then the cabling would come on top. So am I correct in those figures?
I don't know who those figures have been produced by. Oh, sorry, the other ones. I don't know the
Councillor Cole gave them to us from the employers and the businesses that he's collected.
They've not been generated by a transport consultant. I don't know the basis for.
So we're saying that what Councillor Cole's put in front of us is not reliable?
We're saying that the type of traffic, the way that we have to look at traffic information, which is the industry standard, that highways consultants use is done with a certain methodology in a robust way. That information has not been put forward to us by Mr. Glover or Councillor Cole. So that hasn't been tested by the Highway Authority. What the information that has been tested by the Highway Authority, based on the information submitted by various parties, not just the applicant, confirms that there will be no severe impact on the highway after the impacts were mitigated, and those, when taken into account, also the recommended conditions. So you have to take into account the mitigation that could be achieved, not just the headline figure.
I now have Councillor Purvis, followed by Councillor Leyland. And Councillor Darrington.
Okay, is it me then? Right. So I think it was said that New Ash Green comprises 5% of the district's population. So you've had a lot of objections, either by letter or by petitions. So what percentage of the population of New Ash Green is objecting to this application?
We don't know that. Obviously, we have recorded the information in the report, but often there've been multiple consultations, and therefore there are multiple addresses would have sent in multiple comments. So it's not easy to extrapolate the information from the details that we've received.
I think it's fair to say that it's a fair number of people, but we just don't know the exact percentage.
Yeah.
Councillor Leyland, you were next after Councillor Purvis.
Getting back to the previous issue, are we in a position, after all what you said, is you don't know?
Which issue are you referring to, Councillor Leyland?
The previous numbers about traffic movements.
We do know the traffic movements because that information has been submitted by the applicant. There's information also, there's obviously other information submitted by the objectors, but the Highway Authority as KCC have reviewed the information for the application and are satisfied that there would be no severe highway impacts, and those are summarised in the report. So we do know the answer, and members will...
Did we know the numbers?
I believe my colleague has just answered that.
The numbers set out in paragraphs 459 and 460 of the original report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leyland, and now Councillor Darrington.
Thank you, Chair. We established going to be a circa 100 workers on site at any one time, which would mean roughly 50 vehicles. These are very narrow roads. We couldn't say park on the road. Will provision be made for on-road off-site parking rather?
Can we just clarify, you said 100 workers on site. I believe when you asked that question of the applicant, it was related to the construction process?
He did state around 100 workers on any one time.
I think I specifically clarified with you, Councillor Darrington, was that for the construction or during the normal operation of the site? And you said the construction. Yeah. So that will be over at the end of the construction period. Your question, is it how many will be on site after it's up and running and finished, or is it for during the construction period?
During construction, please.
Thank you.
So I don't have staffing numbers, but the staffing broadly equates to the staff traffic movements that we've just referred to and as set out in paragraph 459 of the original report. What we do require by condition, I think it's condition 15, is a detailed construction management plan, and one of the details that would be required to form part of that is the site setup, the construction site setup, including any compounds, staff parking, and those kind of details.
Thank you.
Right, well, that concludes our questions. Oh, Councillor Hogarth, you have one.
Yes, two very quick questions. There was mention made of the potential for an appeal and costs that might be associated with that. Are those costs relevant to consideration of this planning application tonight? That's question one.
Can I answer that first? Is that okay? With a lot of information that we're trying to grapple with. So in terms of financial, members' focus should be on the planning merits, not the financial risks. However, having said that, members do need to be be aware of the advice, particularly I think I've summarised on the other matters, which is from paragraph 177, page 47 of the addendum report, which talks about unreasonable behaviour. So unreasonable behaviour has the potential to lead to order the costs, but what the report aims to do is to help members understand the basis of the decision making that is expected of them through government guidance in the MPPG and the MPPF, in terms of making sure that any reasons that they may consider for either permission or refusal stand up to scrutiny on the planning merits supported by robust evidence.
Thank you. That was first
You had
question.
a second question, yes?
Second question is, what roughly are the numbers of people using the public rights of way on a weekly or monthly or annual basis? And was that higher or lower than during COVID?
We don't have the public rights of way movement figures. I don't know whether that is something that KCC, as the body responsible for public rights of way, hold for every individual public right of way. That being said, they have commented on the application and raised no objection. There is again a condition that requires detailed plans for the retention and management of the public rights of way, so they will continue to benefit local walkers. But I'm afraid I don't have the details of the numbers.
That's condition 25 for the public right of way.
Councillor Haslam, you've put your hand up too.
Yes, I have a slightly different question. I see there's 23 references to aquifer in the main block of papers. I couldn't see any information in there which regards to the aquifer depth, the time or where the water runoff from the site is, because it's a clay surface and the permeation through that will clearly doesn't happen that quickly because it's so muddy up there. And the time to enter the aquifer from there. Do you have any information on that, please?
I'm afraid it's going a little bit too technical for me. The information is in the flood risk and drainage strategy in terms of, so infiltration testing has been carried out, and that's been reviewed both by the lead local flood authority and the Environment Agency. But yeah, we don't have specific filtration rates. I don't have them to hand.
My understanding and the water runoff through into an aquifer takes sometimes hundreds of years rather than, it's not instant.
So I mean, so the flood risk and drainage strategy, as I say, includes those details. It includes the makeup of the ground beneath the surface and the geology of the area. So my understanding is that the Environment Agency would have taken those factors into account in considering their response.
Thank you all for those amazingly widespread questions that we've had. And I'm going to go back to the original motion on the table in front of you, which is the recommendation is that planning permission be granted subject to A, the conditions set out below, subject to any minor changes to wording being agreed, and a satisfactory legal agreement under section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 as amended. You've got the detail. You've got the details in front of you on the what? Yeah, I will. Details in front of you on page 1 of your papers. And please may I ask you all to take very careful notice of the late observations, which are most copious, but you had time to read them all before the thing started. So therefore we are now in debate. Well, who'd like to kick off? Councillor White.
Go on then. I'll do my best. There's been a lot of commentary regarding the fire risks here, which is a concern. I'm sure the recent coverage of solar panels on a residential property, that the residents there were assured that the solar panels were safe, but they exploded on the property and damaged it completely. I am concerned with the fire risk. The fencing is going to be so high that passerbys, ramblers wouldn't necessarily be able to raise an alarm because they wouldn't be able to see it. They might be able to smell it. The mobile signal, as we were being driven around on the site visit, was non-existent. And it was only when we reached the equestrian centre that I was then getting messages on my device. So it is a concern for me. And I think that whilst the solar panels themselves might be very safe, the actual construction process incidents can occur. And that is also a worry of raising the alarm and getting the appropriate assistance there as soon as possible. And it's a completely different matter. I do appreciate that. But the Grenfell fire that occurred, there were lessons to be learned on that, as there is with every incident that occurs. And the fire brigade were learning that the protocols that they had were very much out of date. So I am concerned with the connectivity of the mobile system in being able to raise the alarms. I'm concerned with the public rights of way being so high and visually impacting the beauty of the area, and just having a narrow hedgerow corridor. Yes, that's my concerns, and love to hear what other members have to say.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Darrington, followed by Councillor Hudson.
Just a quick one. We've got 73,744 panels being proposed to service 17,000 homes. Is that a good economy of scale?
Yeah, I think members need to be aware that this power is going into the national grid. It isn't even going to provide power to specifically to the local homes. This is a national grid feed.
Okay, point taken.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess I'm going to repeat some of what I said in January. So I have spent weeks and days and hours today going through a huge number of reports, both in front of us and online. I was elected to represent the residents of this district. I can see nothing in this proposal that gives them any benefits, and no benefits accrue to the local community or to this council either. So I have to ask myself why we're doing it. There will be 9 months, we know for sure, of disruption and traffic congestion for residents who can't get children to school and can't get out of the village into work. We are going to have the loss of a quiet enjoyment of the countryside, which is being turned into an industrial landscape. The visual impact on a daily basis, especially for the residents of Redhill Wood, will be appalling. We've heard about loss of employment and loss of businesses, the loss of grazing land for sheep and cattle, and for the milk from that dairy farm, the risk to the aquifer and the water supply for the area, which is something we cannot take lightly, especially in view of what Councillor Manson put in front of us. We're talking about a temporary loss. I'm sorry, but I don't think 40 years is temporary. It will see me out and my children and my grandchildren. And all the time we're being threatened with costs. This is public money. It is their money, the residents here in the gallery. I don't know about my fellow members, but I am prepared to risk it. We have strong evidence from experts in various fields that make me really query. I think we have good evidence, and I don't think we could be deemed to be acting unreasonably. I don't know about my fellow members, but I want to sleep quiet in my bed tonight. And I can't find any reasons to approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but could I ask you please to remain quiet while the debate is in progress? We will get there, I promise. Councillor Ball, I think you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think this is a very complex case. I think at the end it all gets down, my opinion. I'd probably narrow it a bit down to problems with landscape, with heritage, and with hydrology. I'm going to go back to the report that we asked for, which actually is if you look on paragraph 95 on page 32. It does say members of the Development Committee felt that a hydrological risk assessment would be appropriate to assess the risk or pollution to groundwater, taking into account submissions of a third party. Unfortunately, and I think it's unfortunate that the officers didn't draw this to the attention of the committee clearly felt very, very strongly about this. On top of that, our recent local plan, South East Water advised that no large developments should be allowed near source protection zones. But we don't seem to be taking this advice, unfortunately. I think Councillor White spoke about the rights of way. And it's a problem because at the moment, we're proposing to put fences around these rights of way, which is, to me, it's going to have a horrible effect on what it looks like, and clearly is a big problem there as well. You're going to have something which is what, I don't know, 3 to 5 feet, no, more than 3 feet. Is it 5 feet up there all around? And you're walking down this lovely path, but there's a fence all the way around it. It's going to somewhat take away your view on that. So at the moment, unless I hear something to the contrary, I'm minded to agree with Councillor Hudson. But I am listening to what my colleagues have to say as well. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Malone and then Councillor Horwood. I hadn't got my mic.
Thank you, Chair. I share a number of the concerns that Councillor Hudson and Councillor Ball have described, and I've got to say I don't particularly like this proposal. And it's very unfortunate we're living in a world where there isn't much trust in politics and politicians, and there's not much trust in experts either. But we do need to be guided by what the experts tell us, even if we have got some skepticism about them, and what the officers tell us. And we have to ultimately ask ourselves whether we've got a sufficiently strong basis in what's in front of us, and what we can analyse in our heads, not just in our hearts, to reject it. And at the moment, subject to what I hear from the rest of the discussion, I'm afraid that I'm in much the same position I was in January, that I'm sitting here thinking I don't like it, but I probably feel that we don't have sufficiently strong grounds to reject it.
Councillor Horwood, you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, I wasn't at the previous committee meeting, so I've sort of come at this completely fresh, and obviously read through the extensive amount of sort of paperwork correspondence from all parties. And first of all, I want to pay tribute to the officers' work, like in terms of trying to get us where we are. I think this is one of the most difficult decisions this committee has actually ever faced in terms of the complexity, in terms of the conflict between obviously what the applicant is proposing and indeed what the residents and the highly organised sort of campaign group, which have obviously rebutted much of the points from the developer. I think it's really important, as we've always known in this committee. It's about in acting reasonably, we have to look at having arguments that upholds that would uphold appeal. And as part of that process, the officer has obviously highlighted about how we attribute planning weight to our arguments. And that's a key part of this decision tonight as to how we balance the negatives of that have been highlighted around the impact on the landscape, the impact on the heritage assets, potentially the impact on the water supply as well, with obviously the benefits of solar renewable generation, which obviously within the MPPF, we know the government revised extensively in December 2024 to put significant weight on renewable energy to the extent of sort of certain sort of weight against it. But I find, particularly on landscape grounds, we know this is an incredibly beautiful part of the district. There's an extensive range of comments from a number of parties, including, for example, the Public Rights of Way officer from Kent County Council, highlighting, I think they say, the solar farm will transform the character of the area and will have a significant impact on the network. Now, I know obviously there is some mitigation, but clearly the proposals of of fencing that have been put forward really disrupt the enjoyment of that land. There's a significant public rights of way network all across the area that is proposed. And of course, at the moment, they're looking at green space, landscape space, which has immense value when compared to the built-up area of New Ash Green, and in contrast to the built-up area of New Ash Green. And I think it was Councillor Scott highlighted, about potentially what may or may not be included in the forthcoming Regulation 19 notice. If that level of development were to go ahead, clearly this land is even more valuable from a landscape perspective in its current form. I think I do put a lot of weight on the landscape. I think the officer in the report has attributed moderate weight. I think sort of when you consider the contrast to a large urban area in what is a very rural and remote part of the district, sort of in the land that is proposed for the solar farm, there's not really any development in the fields. There's not like a number of cottages or built form in that area. It is currently farmland, agriculture use for obviously has been described earlier. So I think when you're looking at that from a landscape perspective, the grounds of that, you have to attribute moderate or potentially more weight in consideration of that. We've also talked about, the officer's report also talks about the impact on heritage assets. So potentially, the impact on, the Grade 2 Ridley Court, the granary, the Berries Maple, all of which are also important when considering, when considering that weighted balance against the benefits to the negatives of the scheme. And certainly, as we know from the MPPF, so we have to attribute great weight when there is harm to listed assets. And I think the officer's report does highlight that there is, that weight is certainly impactful when considering both issues. I know that, obviously our conservation officer takes a different view, and this isn't the first time this committee takes a different view to a conservation officer. Naturally, the assessment of landscapes and the assessment of the impact on heritage assets is naturally a subjective assessment. It's not something that you can definitively say or definitively and objectively assess, the harm. It's a matter of every individual's opinion. And actually, in successive appeals that have gone through, inspectors have noted the planning committee's ability, especially on subjective matters, to reach a different conclusion to officers. We had the issue, for example, in Braisted, I think it was, where we were looking at design. The officer had one view, and the inspector upheld that at least the committee could come to a different view of that officer, and that wasn't deemed unreasonable on those grounds. We have also had, opinions when we looked at the Seven Oaks. There was a planning application in Seven Oaks Town. I think it was Seven Oaks Kippington Ward, where we're looking at the conversion of a property. And again, the committee came to a different decision as proposed by officers. And again, that was actually upheld at appeal. I think when we're making this decision, councillors have to be very clear on the weight that they give, those negative grounds against the positive grounds as articulated in the PPF and by the applicant. And in my view, the impact on the landscape and the impact on the heritage assets outweighs the benefits afforded by renewable energy. So certainly I'm minded to not approve it at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood. Looks as though we've reached the... Oh, no, Councillor Purvis, I didn't see you. You're not gesticulating high enough. And Councillor Glennis-Darrington.
I appreciate that if we recommend refusal tonight, the chance will go to appeal and we risk getting costs against us. But I believe we should take that risk before we lose vast swathes of our countryside to solar panels. So to me, it's worth the risk.
Thank you, Councillor Purvis. Councillor Glennis-Darrington.
Yes, it's just a quick one. We haven't really looked into the fact, the effect on mental well-being. The weight of landscape is very important for this, and it will be severely affected by enclosed public rights of way. Fresh air and greenery won't be taken away, and the open aspects are necessary for peace of mind. Our children need to have this. As we know, a lot of children have had problems with social interactivity due to the fact of COVID and various other issues. What we're really doing is shutting them off from the outside world. And it is important that they can appreciate everything that this country has to offer in what is left, the vestige of greenery that is left in our countryside, that they can enjoy it to its full advantage. And I am not happy with this application whatsoever. I would like to sleep at night as well, knowing that our children, our grandchildren, our future grandchildren are going to be happy with this country, because it's going the wrong way at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darrington. Councillor Leyland.
I think you all know what I'm going to say, what I usually say. Okay. Right, I'm going to surprise you all. We need to listen to the community and the people who live there. I don't live there. I live miles away. I live quite up the longest distance away from there as most of us. But if I'm just thinking about it, if that happened in Edenbridge or something like that, I couldn't foresee myself. And again, I'll just emphasize, and I will appeal to the members of this committee, that please listen to the community. And at this moment in time, I'm minded to refuse it.
Councillor Haslam.
This is, again, I wasn't here in January. In some ways, I'm sorry I'm having to be here tonight, because it is a complicated decision, and there is obviously a lot to this. However, I have a number of reservations. And this obviously does have a big impact. From when we had the visit to the site, I felt I was trying to get my head around what was going on with this. And I think that there seems to have been, the community hasn't seemed to have been involved as much as I potentially would have liked, or this is not giving anything, or there's a perception that there's not giving to the community. However, if I look at the safety risk of the fire example, up until this week and the site visit, I'd never heard of a solar farm going on fire. I mean, just because there may be a fire doesn't mean to say that the whole solar arrays in each paddock would be on fire. It may be limited. Unfortunately, we didn't hear how fire is going to be monitored or controlled, but I think that there is saying there's a 100% chance of fire in 40 years is really, I don't say it's conjecture, but there's no facts or evidence to base that on what we've seen tonight. If I look at where we are, and I'm looking at the papers, and it's like the reason we're here tonight is that there was a decision that was taken. We asked the officers to go back and look at the robustness of that decision, and from what I'm reading here is that decision, or the officer's recommendation is robust and it is substantiated, and on that basis, although I don't particularly, I'm challenged. I think that for the district as a whole, this is the route that I would propose, is that we support the officers, because, and thank you again for the work you've put into this, because there is so much here, is that we shouldn't look at going down a litigious route because of the I'm sorry, but I think that, we should approve the application.
Thank you, Councillor Haslam. Is there, Councillor Hall, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just not to come back to Councillor Haslam, but just when we're also obviously I'm sure councillors if may wish to also add sort of comments around, particularly around the landscape and heritage, if they potentially had any thoughts on that. But one thing, I was talking about planning balance earlier, and it is actually included in the officers' report. So for the purposes of debate, I will also include about the impact, as we've heard, on the dairy farm. And obviously the negative impact that could be caused by this decision would be, the loss of jobs on that farm. I know in the report it highlights the adverse impact, the positive benefits, from construction jobs and, sort of like those economic benefits of bringing new jobs to the area. I always think that on balance, where you've got existing employment, people who live in the area, people who have got those jobs, that's their livelihood and their source of income, and probably have been doing these jobs for many, many years. Like farmers don't tend to change employment regularly. You can't compare that necessarily to the positive of some temporary workers who may or may not be from the area. So again, sort of that's highlighting one of the again negative considerations when you're weighing up the the planning balance. But I'd be very grateful to hear from any colleagues on any other grounds specifically we've talked about.
Thank you. Councillor Granville, and then Councillor Hudson.
Thank you very much. Well, I've listened very carefully to the arguments from both sides, and I must say it's an enormous amount of work the officers have done. I'm really grateful for that. My biggest issue is the landscape. I'm really concerned about the landscape, and if you look at the contour map, it's quite small scale. I've seen solar farms on flat ground, flat land, and actually they're quite acceptable, really. This is contoured in 3 dimensions, the site, and I've seen solar farms on sites like this, and there's no way that they can ever look, that they can't substitute for the landscape. They can't help it, but they're terribly, terribly ugly. I can't bear the idea of New Ash Green being surrounded with that on one side, and then the potential of perhaps some very good new development, depending on Regulation 19, around it. This would be like the worst bit of architecture that you've ever seen in your life. And so I worry very much about this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Some of the harms taken individually and they hit up against the planning balance. But taken all together, I believe the severe cumulative impact of them outweighs any benefits.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. Well, I think we've run out of debate, so I'd like to put the motion as per your agenda papers. The recommendation is that planning be granted, subject to the conditions set out below, the Section 106 agreement, a satisfactory legal agreement therein, and taking strong account of the late observations. You can if we get 5 members standing up. In that case, yes, you may by all means have a recorded vote.
Thank you, members. I will read your name in order as they appear on my agenda front sheet. And if you could please let me know if you are voting in favour of the recommendation, against the recommendation, or abstaining. So, Councillor Ball.
Against.
Councillor Paul Darrington. Councillor Granville.
Against.
Councillor Hogarth. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Leyland.
Against.
Councillor Malone. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cathy Morgan. Councillor Purvis. Councillor Solander.
Abstain.
Councillor White.
Against.
Councillor Ray. Councillor Horwood.
Against.
Councillor Glynis Darrington.
Against, sorry, against.
Councillor Haslam.
Well, the recommendation is lost. Councillor Hudson. Thank you. I'd now like to say that in accordance with Part 7 of the Council's Constitution, I'm going to invite the officer to address this committee on the implications of that decision you've just made not to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it'd be helpful before members debate and consider what happens next, some key sort of helpful information about sort of the decision-making process. So I'll start again at paragraph 181. I know you've heard it a lot, but please bear with me. So paragraph 181 of the addendum report, the MPVG sets out some advice. And second sentence, where members take decisions on planning applications, they must do so in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Members must only take into account material planning considerations, which could include public views where they relate to relevant planning matters. Local opposition or support for a proposal is not in itself a ground for refusing or granting planning permission unless it is founded upon valid material planning reasons. I'm afraid I've got a bit to go, so bear with me. It's important to have reasons for refusal that can stand up to scrutiny on the planning merits, supported by robust evidence. If disagreeing with the advice given in the report and from consultees in particular, case law advises that clear reasons are required to explain why members are disagreeing and what evidence leads them to that conclusion. To pursue grounds of refusal where there is no clear substantive evidence of significant and demonstrable harm, where there is limited evidence that the harms would outweigh all the benefits identified in the local and wider public interest, where a proposal complies with planning policy, where recent appeal decisions on solar farms give a clear indication of how the matters being considered for grounds of refusal are being addressed when tested, where insufficient weight is being given to the mitigation proposed and the safeguards available through the imposition of conditions, that could be considered unreasonable behaviour. Paragraphs 1877 to 184 of the addendum report on pages 47 to 49 reiterate that any ground of refusal needs to be robust to have a reason that can stand up to scrutiny. Council will have to defend each ground of refusal with robust evidence. So that hopefully is helpful advice when you're considering the next stage of this process. The refusal for each ground, Council will have to defend each ground of refusal with robust evidence so that refusal for each ground is not considered unreasonable. So each ground of refusal would be tested at appeal. It's not necessarily straightforward to just put them all together and say cumulatively, I've gone over that bar. It's not quite as straightforward as that in terms of the decision-making process. Adding more grounds of refusal doesn't assist if there's a lack of robust and compelling evidence to defend each individual ground. Where members' views differ from the views of statutory consultees and other consultees who have specialist knowledge and responsibilities in their field, the bar is higher. Where they have not raised objections on the issues that members are considering for grounds of refusal, there need to be particularly compelling evidence noting the weight decision makers are expected to give to these consultees. Therefore, the risks in those circumstances are greater. SDC would be expected to produce its own evidence to substantiate any grounds of refusal. There could be conflicts of interest or differences of opinion between Sevenoaks District Council and those providing evidence to third parties. I would draw members' attention to some of the information provided by the objectors. The legal opinion provided by the objectors refers to 3 potential grounds of refusal. One of the objectors refers to 8 grounds of refusal. So there is not a consistency between all of the information that's provided by the objectors. As stated at paragraph 104 of the addendum report on page 33. Oh, no, I've covered that. Sorry, don't need to hear that again. So NPPG advises at paragraph, as stated at paragraphs 140 to 142 of the addendum report on pages 38 to 39, that refusing planning permission on a ground capable of being dealt with by conditions may be unreasonable behaviour. So some of the matters referred to in debate relating to things like fire, construction management process, some water, if those are covered by conditions, then there is the potential for that to be considered unreasonable behaviour if tested at appeal. That's not to say it will be, but obviously it depends on the information that comes out from your discussions. When assessing the robustness of potential grounds of refusal, the assessment needs to look at all the benefits and harms and material considerations in the planning balance, taking account of national and local planning policy. So it will obviously assist if we understand the weight that's being attached to the harm and the benefits, as Councillor Hallwood is explaining, so that there's an understanding of how members are reaching their decision. As summarised in paragraph 2 of the NPPF, planning law requires that applications be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. We will be expected as a council to submit compelling and robust evidence to support any grounds of refusal independently of the views and documents submitted by other parties. Officers cannot guarantee that consultants will be found to defend the grounds of refusal that members determine, and in addition that a planning professional could be found to support the reviews that expressed by members on the planning balance and the weight to be attached to the harms and benefits. If the council decided at a later date not to defend an appeal, if, for example, there is a Rule 6 party that still intends to appear in an inquiry, the council and the appellant would still incur costs if there was an appeal and a public inquiry was held. To defend a ground of refusal appeal, it'll obviously be helpful if members can consider what evidence led them to the grounds for refusal and why the harm identified by members outweighs the benefits and the presumption in favour of development. So a couple of points from some of the specifics that were brought up. Loss of jobs. Members referred to evidence about loss of jobs. I would caution members that opinions expressed by objectors that haven't been tested through things like employment studies may not be considered robust and compelling evidence. The reference was made to the milk business. We have received information from that business and they have noted that although they haven't had discussions for a long time, they have had discussions about what the implications for their business. And at this stage, there is still clearly scope for negotiation, both in relation to this site and other agricultural land that may be available for that business. And this would impact on the weight to be attached to the harm that members might consider should be appropriated to that business. There is no evidence at this stage that that business would actually be lost. So it would be helpful to sort of have some clarity if members are thinking about that. There was also mention for other businesses, but we haven't seen evidence that could be that those businesses would be substantially harmed, particularly by the construction works, as conditions and the mitigations that were put in the original recommendation of permission would, in our view, address that impact. So again, it's about understanding sort of what evidence the members might be giving weight to. Fire. A comment was made about fire on solar panels on a roof of a building. Solar panels on a roof of a building are very different for the solar panels here. Members will be aware that we have solar panels on our own buildings. And if there was such an inherent fire risk that every solar panel would always catch light at some point in 40 years, I'm sure there would be different discussions being had in terms of permitted development rights, building regulations and such like. I think it will be very, very difficult in light of Kent Fire and Rescue's comments, and that there is evidence that would justify a fire ground refusal.
Can I ask the gallery, please, to just keep the noise completely quiet just for a few more minutes?
Our heritage, we have well-respected heritage specialists in-house. I appreciate that some might think there's, it's a matter of opinion, but actually heritage, there's a lot more very specialist assessment about harm and setting, about the history of buildings, about the character of buildings. And it's a little bit more complex than design issues, where there's a little bit more sort of judgment and sort of involved. They have concluded that the harm will be temporary and reversible, and that the impact on the assets at Berries Maple and Ridley Court and others would amount to less than substantial harm and would not be a strong reason for refusing permission. If heritage is something members are concerned about, it will be helpful to understand what the specific issues were that would concern you. Reference was also made to 40 years not being temporary. I have a lot of sympathy with that sort of statement because I think most of us in this room would see 40 years as a significant amount of time. As you're aware from our report, we have done extensive research on appeal decisions, not just for this application, but all the previous applications that have come before us. In recent years. Those appeal decisions, I can't say unanimously, but virtually everything I've read, 40 years is considered temporary by the Planning Inspectorate. That's not something that we would be able to defend at appeal. There may be other specific matters I can help you with when we hear the debate, but I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Alison. Right. Well, you've voted down the recommendation of the officers, so now we need a motion for refusal in front of us to debate. Councillors Hudson and Hallwood, are you busily working on some process here? So Councillor Hallwood.
Yeah, so Chair, I think you know, sort of, and listening to the advice sort of from the principal planning officer, I think when we've looked, when you know, throughout the debate, obviously we've talked about the impact of on landscape, and I think previously we might have talked about the you know, sort of grounds, EM1, EM5, SP1, LO1, LO8, sorry, SP1 and LO1, LO8 is sort of from the core strategy, EM1, EM5 is from the ADMP. I do wonder, obviously we did talk about heritage assets and sort of recognising that, you know, as the officer says, around heritage assets, there is still a level of harm. And if I'm right in thinking, somewhere within the NPPF, it does talk about, you know, sort of when you're looking at less than substantial harm to heritage assets, you know, that still could be a grounds of refusal. So I'd be sort of grateful for, yeah, the development manager's sort of views on that. Sort of is, I got the sense that you didn't feel that the objection on the heritage assets was a grounds of refusal. Even if we look at that and landscapes.
Would you like to take that?
Thank you. I think if members wish to consider heritage, they would need to be satisfied that it mounted to a strong reason for refusal. That's probably the most straightforward way of putting it.
Yeah, it may be. I think it'd be helpful if we maybe had a break just to go through the points. I think there are points that I can look through the papers to articulate why that is a strong reason for refusal.
Yeah, I'm prepared to accept a break. You can have 5 minutes. However, there must be no discussion with anybody outside of the committee. There must be no use of mobile phones or tablets or anything else. If you just need 5 minutes to confer, by all means do take it. Isn't it? Oh, look, these people are all part of it. So they're reading. Yeah, Councillor Leyland, if we could hang on for a few more minutes, I'd be grateful. Are we anywhere near a resolution, guys?
I can assist, so I can start with the landscape and heritage.
Councillors Horwood and Hudson and Ball. Alison is very kindly offering to assist with heritage and landscape. So would you like to sort of now, because I'm conscious time is going past.
Yeah,
I
that
think
would
we
be
need to
really
have a
helpful, Joe.
robust,
We have,
proper decision.
I have scribbled some things down, but I will certainly defer to Alison's guidance. Thank you.
In the gallery, can we now have silence, please? Thank you. Alison.
To assist members, I'll read out some potential landscape heritage grounds and then see that where we go from there. So on landscape, potential ground refusal will be, we just speak slowly. The proposal, due to the extent of coverage, the character of the area and the proximity and visibility within the landscape, would cause significant harm to the landscape character of the area, which would not be outweighed by the benefits of the development or the wider public interest in providing renewable energy. And then you mentioned policy LO1 and LO8 and SP1, SP10, I think of the 7 Oaks core strategy, and policies EM1 and EM5 of the ADMP, and presumably the national planning framework. Heritage. The proposed development would be an incongruous form of development in the open countryside that causes harm to designated and non-designated heritage assets. Great weight must be given to the conservation of heritage assets, and the failure to conserve these assets conflicts with policy SP1 of the core strategy, policy EM4 of the ADMP. Obviously, we would draft these in full for members rather than doing the acronyms, and the national planning policy framework. The public benefits of the development do not outweigh the heritage harm. Happy with those? Is there anything else?
Yeah, just
hold on, Councillor Horwood.
Yeah, just on in terms of the landscape as well. Is there anything on sort of BMV land? I know, like obviously in the report we talk about BMV land and the percentages, and there's a discrepancy around the assessment, and the objector's assessment, which has highlighted a higher BMV value of the land, or perceived higher value of BMV of the land, which I think they talk about 84% compared to the Chimansville, which was 70-something%. Obviously, the applicant has provided detail where I think it's only 53%. Is there anything around BMV within the landscape that could be incorporated in that, or is it your
I
view
would
that?
say that's very, very difficult to defend. Firstly, there's no loss of agricultural land. Again, this is one of those issues that's tested considerably at appeal. And in fact, we did try very hard to get an agricultural consultant for Chimham's Farm and weren't successful. Some members will recall that. And the advice we got back on Chimham's Farm from a known specialist in that area was that actually a fallow period is actually beneficial to agricultural land. So that because you're weighing the benefits of the agricultural land from not being farmed intensively, then that becomes a really difficult thing. I'd also say that the applicant would have actually tested the soils. So there's information, obviously general information available on the internet about best and most versatile agricultural land, but that's slightly more strategic. So for this type of scheme, the applicant would have tested the soils directly, and that information is much more robust. So probably not recommended.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. I didn't have any extra points to add. I think they were very articulate, and sort of what I was scribbling in my notes to try and produce some sentences around that. So thank you.
Right, Councillor Purvis. Can I ask for silence from the gallery, please? We're talking down here.
Is there any mileage in transport and access issues?
KCC Highway Authority have not raised any objection.
The fact that they don't, unfortunately, is not relevant to our discussions. We can only base our refusal on the grounds that we've actually got the ability to defend. And that means properly looked at, properly articulated, properly researched data and comments.
Just if I clarify, like, so, Councillor Hudson and Councillor Ball were suggesting the water issue, but sort of I think that is, along with, like, for example, the fire risk, where the statutory consultees have offered no objection, and those are areas where it is harder to go against the statutory consultee on appeal. I don't feel that those grounds would be suitable.
It's not just harder, Councillor Hall, would it? I mean, if they've said that they have no objections, we could not defend that position. However much we might want to. Okay, so are you primed with your formal motion?
Yeah, indeed. I think, if I go over the points, just on the policy, Alison, that you mentioned, is there any mileage in EN4 as well? Because EN4 talks about heritage assets. You mentioned EN5 and EN1, but in the reason for refusal.
I've got EN4 on heritage.
You did mention it in the reason for it, but yeah, so...
Alison, so you actually got the wording of this written out on something that you could potentially... Can I ask for no further comments from upstairs, or I will have the gallery emptied?
Right, just for clarity for those in the room and watching, the two grounds of refusal I read out are written down with the addition of LO1, if you can understand my scribble, and I'll hand this to Vice Chair Councillor Horwood.
Does that make your life a little simpler?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Right. Okay. Yeah. So the reason for refusal. So the proposal, due to the extent of coverage, the character of the area, and the proximity and visibility within the landscape, would cause significant harm to the landscape character of the area, which would not be outweighed by the benefits of development or the wider public interest in providing for renewable energy. The proposal is therefore contrary to policies LO8 and SP1 and SP10 of the Sevenoaks Core Strategy, and policies EN1 and EN5 of the Sevenoaks ADMP and the National Planning Policy Framework. It was the first grounds of refusal. And then the second, the proposed development would be an incongruous form of development in the open countryside that causes harm to designated and non-designated heritage assets. Great weight must be given to the conservation of heritage assets, and the failure to conserve these assets conflicts with policy SP1 of the Sevenoaks Core Strategy and policy EM4 of the Sevenoaks Allocations and Development Management Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, and the public benefits of the development do not outweigh this heritage harm.
Thank you. So are you formally proposing that we refuse this application on the grounds that you have just given?
Yes.
And do you have a seconder? You do. In which case we're now open for debate on refusing the application on the grounds that you've just heard. Would you like to kick off, Councillor Horwood?
No, I think it's summarised in the debate.
You're happy with that? Does anybody else have anything else that they would like to add? Well, before I put it to the vote, in accordance with paragraph 7 of the Council's Constitution, I'm going to invite you to... nothing more you can add? No, okay. In which case, if there's nothing more we can add, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation to refuse the application, please show. Any against? Were there any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You have refused the application. Is there anything else I need to do? In which case, at 10:17, I close this meeting.